Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Let's hop in with another tutorial. Today we're getting started with our wine glass already prepped. You can see we went in with a cherry red. You can see I'm showing you two colors, but we actually only use Ruby Woo today. First thing you want to do to begin this process is to mix up your resin. Today we're using the Ultra Clear Facet from Counterculture. You're going to need about 1 to 2 milliliters of epoxy resin for this step. Make sure that you spread it evenly over your entire base and make sure it is nice and thin. Once we get our epoxy nice and smooth and even, we're gonna go in with the next step, which is applying our glitter. So I am taking the color Ruby Woo from Sugar and Spice Glitter and sprinkling that all over the tumbler. Everything that we use here today in this video will be listed down below. Ruby Woo is a part of our collection that is manufactured here in the United States. It's currently out of stock, but we will be getting it back in stock soon, so keep an eye out for that. Again, all the links to everything that's going to be used in this video will be listed in the description down below. For this part, you just want to make sure that you get a nice good coverage. This is a chunkier glitter color, and so you want to make sure that you get nice good coverage. It's laying nice and flat. Here you can see I'm tapping off the excess. Here's a little trick I'm going to show you guys on how to get your chunky glitter nice and flat. This paper that I'm showing you here is a freezer paper. You can see that there are two sides to this paper. The first side is shiny and the other side is matte. You're going to take the shiny side of your paper and you're going to press it on the bottom of your tumbler like you just saw me do. And another way you can do this is to actually press on the sides of the tumblers like this, or you can wrap it, which I'm going to show you here now. Wrap up your tumbler with the freezer paper, shiny side towards the glitter, and press with your hands nice and firm. Now you don't want to shift or move any glitter, you're just applying pressure with this point, and the shiny side is going to make everything nice and smooth. So you'll see here that I'm just going in with my fingers and applying pressure, pressing down, and we'll expose here and show you what we got. So you can see how much that worked just by pressing down all of the glitters. And now I'm going to go in with my finger after this part right here, which I'm just using the freezer paper just to press down some little parts that are sticking up here. Then I'm going to go in with my finger and push down whatever other little pieces that may be up around the rim. I like to swipe my finger on the inside of the rim, push down whatever little glitters that are sticking up around there. This actually helps your resin glide on top of the chunky glitter really well. Now, our glitter that we're using today isn't extremely chunky, but this works for all kinds of glitters, especially your chunky ones. I like to do this because I feel like it helps the resin glide and create a smooth finish. Once you've got your glitter nice and flat and smooth, you're going to go ahead and let that cure. So we've already let that cure for about 2 to 3 hours. Since we used the facet, we can go in now with another coat. And here I'm going in with some more facet, and I'm doing what's considered a flood coat. You can see that I'm going in pretty generously, but I am letting the resin pretty much do its thing, and my finger is only guiding the resin around the tumbler. I'm not pushing down on the glitter. I'm not really moving the glitter around at all. Now here in this part where you can see that I'm moving my finger, I'm actually not touching the glitter at all. I am just guiding the resin to where it needs to go, and this helps create a nice, even, and thick coverage. So when you're working with bigger cut glitter, you want to make sure that you get a pretty nice finish on the first round. That way you don't have to worry about any bumps or any pieces sticking up. So hopefully this part is helpful for you guys. These two things that I showed you with the freezer paper and this flood coat right here always ensures that my tumblers that I use, the chunkier glitters, have a nice smooth finish. Once we have that all smoothed out, we're going to hit that with my heat gun just to pop any bubbles that might come up on the surface. Then we're going to let that cure for another 2 to 3 hours, and we'll go into the next step. So here I just wanted to give you guys a closer look at what the tumbler looked like after applying the flood coat. You can see how smooth it's already looking. So yeah, just wanted to give you guys a close-up here. And then in this part over here, when it was cured, I believe this was the very next day, I took it outside, had to give you guys a sneak peek. But if you follow me on Instagram, you probably already seen this part. Now I'm ready to apply my vinyl design, and I actually created this myself in Design Space. The font for the word bite is called Scary Halloween font, and the font that I use for the other word, just one, is Angelina. I actually purchased that one on defont.com, and then I replaced the letter O with a drippy skull, and I found that image on Design Space just by searching in images drip. It's one of the first images that comes on. I thought that would be a really cute addition to kind of tie in this drippy poison apple. So I went ahead and welded all that. I cut out the just one in white vinyl and bite in that pretty green vinyl. Now I was just kind of seeing where I wanted to place my lettering, decided to go in with the word bite first because I wanted to overlay just one on top of that slightly. So I go ahead and apply my contact sheet, and then we're going to apply that to the tumbler. You have that on, you want to gently peel up your contact sheet. Now I'm going to go in with the other vinyl, which is the just one. This is in white. Now, looking back at this video and the tumbler being complete, I really wish I would have went in with a glow in the dark vinyl. And originally I was going to do that, but decided last minute to change it to regular vinyl. So looking back now, I wish I would have went with my original thought, which was to do the glow in the dark vinyl. I think it would have really pulled everything together. But all in all, I still think that the design is really pretty and still looks good. It just doesn't glow in the dark. So that's something that you may want to do if you're going to try this tumbler design. Once you have your design on, I like to let it sit for about an hour before I go in with my next coat of epoxy. That's just to let the vinyl adhere to the tumbler. I think it helps ensure that the vinyl won't peel up. So I always like to wait about an hour. But now I'm going in with another top coat here of my facet from Counterculture, again, making sure that it is nice and smooth again. And then we'll let that cure and go on to the next step, which is the really exciting part of this video. So here's another little close-up of the tumbler spinning with the top coat of epoxy. Alright guys, so now it is time for the really exciting and super fun part of this tutorial or video. So I want to just be completely honest with you guys here. This is the first time that I am working with Nice and Thick from Counterculture. There is a bit of a learning curve, and it does take a little bit of time to thicken up your epoxy with this product. So I'm going to go through everything that I used to create the drip here. Of course, we are going in now with our epoxy. And I'm using the regular artist resin. I'm going to tint it with this opaque pigment liquid, which I will also link down below. Put 2 drops in there, mix it in. Then I'm gonna go in with Pinata Blanco, which is a white alcohol ink. I put in about 3 drops of alcohol ink in there, and you want to mix that up really, really well. Once you got that mixed up, I went ahead and started adding the glow powder. I really wanted the drip to glow, so I'm going in with a really generous amount because I wanted to ensure that the glow was going to be super, super bright. On top of that, we are going in with 2 little pinches of fluorescent green pigment powder. You want to mix that up really well together. The pigment powder does tend to get a little clumped up, so you want to make sure that you keep mixing and mixing and mixing until you do not see any clumps of pigment powder. The glow powder mixes like a dream, but the fluorescent pigment powder does take a little bit to mix. So I did go in with another extra scoop of glow powder just to be sure that I put enough. Like I said before, I really wanted this drip to glow. Now we're going to start with our nice and thick. Guys, this is the part that I am going to show you. Kind of takes a little bit because you have to keep adding powder, stirring. You want to make sure that you go in with like 1 scoop at a time. So I'm using a 1 teaspoon measuring scoop and I'm going in 1 scoop at a time. So this part, like I said, was pretty tedious. I added 1 scoop, 2 scoops. I believe I ended up adding 8 scoops of nice and thick. So 8 teaspoons total of nice and thick before I got it to the consistency of where I really wanted it. And I probably could have added maybe 1 more scoop, but at that point I was just getting really impatient and wanted to get started on the drip. But I want to show you guys every single scoop that I put in so you can see how I did it, how I mixed it up to get it to the consistency. Now with this part, you want to make sure that you are really babysitting your epoxy mixture because it has to really be the right consistency so that it's not so watery or so runny that it runs all the way down and off your tumbler, but you don't want it to get too thick to the point where it starts to harden and you can't move and play with it. So here you really want to take your time and mix and watch. I like to use my popsicle stick to really gauge and guide me to show me how runny my epoxy is. You can see that after I pour my scoops into there and I mix it, I kind of lift up my popsicle stick to see how fast the epoxy resin drips off of the popsicle stick. Certain points in this part of this video, I even run it off the side of the cup to kind of see how fast it drips down. So you're gonna see me do that throughout this part of the video. We're up on the 4th scoop of nice and thick right now, and we still have about 4 scoops to go. So keep on watching this part of the video. If this is your first time watching this technique, you haven't done this before, then this part is super important and hopefully you can learn something from this. This was pretty not challenging, but just something that I was excited to learn and do with this new product with nice and thick. It definitely does speed up the process a little bit. Again, it's just having to keep adding the product. Before nice and thick, a lot of people would just let the epoxy sit. You could let the epoxy sit and let it get hardened on its own, but then that takes even longer. So here we are at the 5th scoop of nice and thick. Again, you're gonna just see me mixing, lifting up my popsicle stick to see how fast the resin is dripping off. Just keep on watching, and then when we get to the part of the drip part, I will explain to you how to get those really nice drips. So I also wanted to add that it was 8 teaspoons in total for about 30 to 35 milliliters of my mixture here. So depending on how much mixture you have will determine how much nice and thick you will need. So if you have less than 30 to 35, you definitely won't need as much. And I could have probably used a little bit less mixture. So probably looking at about maybe 6 in total for a drip cup. So I just wanted to make sure that I added that little thing in there, because obviously the more mixture you have, the more product you're going to be using. So if you don't use as much as I did, then you won't need as much. So just throwing that in there for you guys. All right, so we finally got to the consistency of where I was really happy. You can see there that it's still kind of on the runnier side, but at this point I didn't really want to add any more scoops of nice and thick. So what I did now, my epoxy was feeling really warm, so I just let it sit for a couple more minutes just to let it thicken on its own without adding any more product. I didn't want to take the chance of it getting too thick and unusable, so I let it sit there in the cup. And I'm wiping my tumbler down again with a microfiber towel and a little bit of acetone just to get rid of any oils or anything that may be on the tumbler. So here you want to take your popsicle stick and kind of wrap the epoxy around the stick and not make sure that you don't have any glopping drips coming down. You'll see that I made a little mistake there with letting the epoxy drip off. Here I'm still kind of gauging how runny my epoxy is. So now I'm gonna take that little bit of popsicle stick and I'm working on the back of the tumbler. Because there is no design on the back of the tumbler, I actually wanted the drips to be longer on the back side than on the front, because I personally do not want my drips to go over the vinyl design on the front. I want it to slightly drip near it, but not cover it entirely. So I'm starting on the back just to kind of gauge how runny or how thick my epoxy is, and then that way by the time we get to the front it's even thicker. So you can see there where I made a mistake, but what's good is that I can show you how to clean it up just by taking a baby wipe and cleaning that off. It comes right up. So now that we got that cleaned up, I'm going back in. You can see I'm kind of just making like a globby line at the top, just guiding my resin and adding it where I want it to be. And I'm gonna do that all around the top of the wine glass, and I'm kind of holding the butt of the tumbler up so that it doesn't really start to fall down just yet. And then you can see here that I'm leaving the front side of the tumbler for last and putting less amount in the front. So right now I'm pretty happy with the amount of drip that I have on the tumbler. So I am putting the tumbler down and kind of starting to let it drip and fall down, and just watching it and seeing if there's any areas where I may want to add some more resin. Like I said before, I want the back of the tumbler to be more drippier than the front, so I'm going to definitely go in and add more epoxy to the back side of the tumbler just so that the drip is heavier in the back. I am smoothing out the drip, just kind of going back and forth, making sure that the epoxy mixture doesn't pull too much away from the rim either. I'm trying not to let that red show through the drip. So you're gonna see that I go back and forth between adding some, moving the resin around, and I know like in certain areas it looks a little bit jaggedy or stringy. That will all even itself out. The little bubbles you see will also smooth itself out. So you can see in the back of the tumbler it's starting to drip a little bit more, and I'm just going to try to maneuver and clean some areas up with the wipey. One thing you want to keep in mind with this technique is that your drip is always going to do pretty much what it wants to do on its own, and no two tumblers are going to have the same exact style of drips. So you do want to keep that in mind when you're doing this technique. Again, the drips are going to fall wherever they are going to fall. You can try to maneuver it and kind of make it how you want it to look, but at the end of the day the drips are gonna fall how they're gonna fall. So far I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. Again, when I'm adding the resin and going over it, I'm sure you're like, what is going on? It looks like a little bit of a mess right here, but epoxy is self-leveling. It's gonna smooth itself out, it's gonna level itself, and it's going to end up looking great. So like I said previously before, I really wanted the drips to be more drippier in the back of the tumbler. So that's why I keep going in with more of the mixture, just to try and get those drips a little bit longer and heavier. So you can see here that I'm still kind of messing with the drips, trying to move around and add wherever I think needs to be added, move around whatever I feel like needs to be moved around. And I know it's kind of looking like a mess right now, but like I said before, it will even itself and smooth itself out. So once I'm happy with the look of the drip, I'm just moving it and looking around just to make sure I like how everything is looking so far. And then we're gonna throw this baby on the tumbler to let it spin so that it can start smoothing and evening out. So here you can see I put it on the turner and it's already starting to smooth out. There's a couple of areas that I do go in and add some more drips at the top where you can see that the red is showing through. I'm gonna fast forward here just really quickly, but you can see there was a little bit of areas at the top where I wanted to add some more. Like I said before, I really didn't want the red to show through at the top. So I'm going in with some more epoxy, just adding that just to try and get more coverage at the top, using my finger wherever I need to help get that covered a little bit more. Alright guys, so that's it for this tutorial. Here's a little close-up on what it looks like now that it's spinning on the turner. You can see that the epoxy is already smoothing out. Those little bubbles are going to pop as it begins to cure. I'm going to throw in a little clip here on what it looks like under the black light. So pretty. Now, if I could go back and change one thing, like I said before, I'll definitely make the vinyl glow in the dark next time. But overall, I am super happy with how this turned out. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on those notification bells so that you can be alerted every time we upload a brand new video. I upload new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So with that being said, I will see you next time. Bye guys.